The hour of 3 o'clock having arrived, I will call to order this meeting of the State Canvassing Board on February 14th, 2018. We will note attendees in the minutes, but I want to acknowledge the attendees now and ask if they would introduce themselves for the record, starting at my left.
Robert Ossum, District Court Judge, 2nd Judicial District.
George Stevenson, District Court Judge, 2nd Judicial District.
Steve Simon, Secretary of State.
Barry Anderson, Justice, Minnesota Supreme Court.
David Lillehaug, Justice, Minnesota Supreme Court.
Thank you, members. The next item that we'll address is approval of the agenda. So I will call for a motion to approve the agenda as proposed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and it's been seconded. All in favor, signify
Aye.
by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion prevails, and the agenda as proposed has been adopted. The next item on that agenda is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting of this body on January 31st, 2018. Board members should have received these minutes prior to the meeting. If members need time for further review, now would be that time. Otherwise, I'll call for a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 31st, 2018.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion prevails, and the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is presentation of the canvass report for the February 12th, 2018 special election in Senate District 54 and the special election in House of Representatives District 23B. And for that, I call on the Elections Director in the Office of Secretary of State, Gary Poser, to make the report. Mr. Poser.
Mr. Secretary and members, what we'll be discussing is the state canvassing report. You should have that in front of you. It's the one with the state seal on it. And if you would turn to the first page, it contains the statistics for the election that was just held. You'll note the 6 counties that were involved in the election are listed by row, and then there's a total row across the bottom. And the first column of significance is the registered as of 7 a.m. So you'll see there were a total of 70,889 voters who were pre-registered prior to the start of Election Day. In the next column, you'll note that there are 362 individuals who registered on Election Day itself. Of those voting, 3,963 voted by absentee or were in a mail ballot precinct. And finally, in the right-hand column, you'll see there is a total voting in the election of 21,138. So not on the report itself, but of interest to you might be the turnout of the voters. So turnout of registered voters, including the individuals who registered on Election Day, was 29.67%. That is actually fairly consistent across both elections. In Senate District 54, it was slightly higher at 29.88%, and in House District 23B, it was 29.22%. And then, just for your information, individually within the counties, Dakota County had a turnout of 31.23%, Washington 29.07%, both within 54. And then in House District 23B, Blue Earth County had the highest turnout out of any of the 6 counties of 33.5%. LeSueur had 21.04%, Waseca 22.74%, and Watonwan 30.33%. So I'd ask if there are any questions on the voting statistics. Otherwise, we will go to the the votes themselves.
Mr. Poser, it's my general impression, it's a data point, doesn't have any significance to what we're doing here today, but it's my impression that this was a somewhat higher percentage of participation in a special election than we might typically see. Am I right about that?
Mr. Secretary and Justice Anderson, that is true. Typically, the turnouts would be in the 20% range, and these are in the 30% range. However, in 2015, the last there was a special election in House District 3A, which turnout was 29.5%, which is in the same ballpark as these 2 elections. Okay.
Any other questions from members?
Okay, then Mr. Secretary and members, if you would turn to page 2, you'll see the turnout for State Senate District 54 and the total line for the candidates. You'll see that Mr. McNamara had 6,813 votes, Ms. Bigham 7,343 votes, Ms. Malingen, 313 votes, and there were 7 write-in votes. And then if you would also then turn to page 3, you'll see the results for the state representative, District 23B. The totals there were for Mr. Munson, 3,941. Ms. Wagner received 2,658 votes, and there were 57 write-in votes. And members, you'll also find a separate report of the registered write-in votes in your information in front of you. We did have one individual who registered as a write-in in District 23B, and in order to get your write-ins specifically tallied for individuals, you need to register as a write-in candidate to do that. So out of the 57 votes in write-in votes in 23B, 38 of those were for Mr. Schmitz. And so for both of these races, then, these numbers are the consolidated numbers that were certified to us by the county canvassing boards. And the results of adopting this canvass report is that after a 2-day contest period expires, certificates of elections would be issued to Carla Bigham in Senate District 54 and Jeremy Munson in House District 23B. Typically, this would occur on Monday, but as next Monday is the President's Day holiday, the certificates would be issued on Tuesday morning, February 20th. And I'd be glad to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions from members? Okay, seeing no questions, I think now is the time when I will entertain a motion to approve the canvassing report for the February 12th, 2018 special elections in Senate District 54 and House of Representatives District 23B as presented by Elections Director Gary Poser. It requires a motion and a second.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion prevails, and the canvass report has been approved. The next item on the agenda requires us all to sign the certification, so I will hand those materials starting at my left. Thank you, members. The next item on the agenda is presentation of the contingent recount plans for publicly funded and discretionary recounts. Mr. Poser, but I would say before I turn it over to you, a question has arisen, and I think it's a good question. And it's one that either you or perhaps Mr. Black might answer, or maybe in combination. My understanding from last time is that because of a fairly recent statutory change, which would have the request for a recount come after this meeting. That's why we are having the discussion now about recounts. But the question arose, if I'm framing the question correctly, why not simply, procedurally speaking, wait for the request for the recount to arise and then reconvene this group, if that were to happen, to adopt these recount plans? Why do it now on a preliminary basis, or why do it now on a contingent basis? So maybe if you could incorporate that into your presentation and/or seek comment from Mr. Black.
Mr. Secretary and members, I'll let Mr. Black chime in if I don't answer the question, I think, to satisfaction. But typically, the recount plans, if there was one that was requested, the urgency part of just getting the recount conducted in a timely manner just allows us to proceed quicker if we have a contingent plan adopted and not waiting for the required time period for public notice of the canvassing board reconvening and just delaying for additional days the start of any recount. So if the members are comfortable with adopting a plan, it just allows us to proceed more quickly.
Mr. Black?
Although I would have to consult the statute, my recollection is that the recount is to be requested by the second day after the canvass. And so I think statutorily, although I should make sure of that, but I believe statutorily it sets the order. And I think we would need to change the statute if we wanted to alter the order of things. Another possibility would be for a canvassing board to adopt a standing recount plan, but then that gets into the question of whether the canvassing board is a continuing body or a new body each time.
Well, I will say another question that arose is, I understand that by statute, there is some fixed date after this meeting by which someone would request a recount, discretionary or otherwise, as the circumstance may warrant. But the question isn't so much that, as I understand it, as what if the parties to the recount, for example, the various candidates or political parties agree on a scheme or a plan that is different from this one, that they think better serves their interests and the interests of the public? Are we then binding the parties, the candidates, and others to a plan that they may wish to amend? And if so, what is the mechanism for amending that? That's very unlikely to arise here, but it's an interesting question going into the future.
The canvassing board, and actually we've had questions arise in the past about plans. I believe there was a spirited debate in 2008 about recount plans and procedures. The canvassing board is in charge. If the parties have come up with something that the canvassing board likes, then the canvassing board may adopt it. But it would take a vote of the board, and certainly the board could amend, if it had passed a plan, it could amend a plan in light of further developments. But there would have to be a meeting and the plan presented and then the board voting on it.
May I follow up with a question, Mr. Secretary, of Mr. Black? I understand Mr. Black has forgotten more about election law, I think, than anyone else knows.
I'll second that.
What amount of time, you have to request a recount 2 days after the canvassing board certifies the result. What amount of time is required to get up to speed to perform the recount? In other words, what would prevent us from providing notice and reconvening to adopt rules for the particular recount?
And there would be the notice provisions of the open meeting law.
And would you remind me what they are?
There would be, for a regular meeting, I believe it's 3 days' notice. We gave 3 days' notice of this meeting. For an emergency meeting, I would have to look into that. What you're suggesting might be viewed as an emergency meeting.
Could one simply give notice of the meeting of the regular meeting of the canvassing board and then a conditional notice in the same way we're adopting a conditional plan?
The best method might be to recess the meeting. You'll remember that at the last meeting we recessed the meeting in case a recount of the primary had been requested. Of course, it was not. But in a recessed meeting, you do not have to give further notice. If you give a notice of the time, and we had a time, although it was technically to the call of the chair, but a time was announced, as I recall. If you announce the time, no further notice is required. There is one other thing, which is that there is a 24-hour delay between the required after the canvassing board, or after the recount is requested, before the recount can start. So there has to be 24 hours, as I recall, between the request. Now, the request could come as soon as 5 minutes after this board canvassed the results, which means your 24 hours would begin, or could begin, once you sent out the notice. And so you could start a recount most likely on the second day after the actual canvassing board meeting. Otherwise, the latest it could be started would be on the probably the fourth business day after the canvassing board.
One follow-up question, if I might. When did the canvassing board begin adopting contingent plans for discretionary recounts?
I believe
in
that-
advance of the recount being requested?
Right, I believe that change was in the 2015 legislature, and I believe the first time we adopted contingent plans was 2016.
Thank you.
And of course, now in 2018, we've already done it for these special elections, and we will do it absent legislative change for the August primary and the November election.
Justice Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. So my suggestion would be, and I'm prepared to support the contingent plan for discretionary recount. I think it makes sense to do it here. But my suggestion would be that perhaps some thought should be given to how this is handled relative to the general election, and whether it might be possible to have a notice of intent or something like that. It does strike me that having the canvassing board adopting the rules coincident with a demand for a recount might be a better way to proceed. I don't know that I can anticipate or can think through what all the complications might be, but that might be something worth considering. I don't think it's a big deal, but something that might be worth some further thought, and maybe possibility of inquiring of the legislature as to changing in timing too.
Mr. Secretary, I'm prepared to vote for the contingent plan for today. I do think that there's a benefit in, if there's a major recount, especially of a statewide nature, I think it's extremely important to get the input of the parties to the recount. And I think that can save the state money potentially. So I'm prepared to vote aye today, and with a recommendation, hope that in something as important as a statewide recount in a general election, that the board would wait and see if there's a recount and then convene and adopt rules with the input of the parties.
Mr. Black?
And let me just add that in the case of, in the case of certain high-profile recounts that we've had in the state in recent decades, it has become clear from election night results that the race was close enough that there would likely be a publicly paid for recount. Those are a little easier to identify than the discretionary recounts, which oftentimes are taken even though the margins are relatively wide.
And I would just add, just to say this for the record, if my recollection is correct, in the 2016 general election, there was, in the 8th Congressional District, it looked for a time as if one of the candidates would ask for a recount, not an automatic recount, but a discretionary one, because it was just over the threshold. He then thought differently after a day or two, but there was a recent situation where we might have gone down that path, where on election night it didn't appear that it was within the publicly paid automatic recount, but close enough so that the candidate was willing to bear the cost for recount. It didn't happen, but it looked like it might for a while.
That is correct, and also I might add, although not a major party candidate, or excuse me, I guess in 2014, for the Independence Party nomination for Secretary of State, there was also a similar question, although obviously the raw numbers were smaller, but that question did arise, and I would simply point out that there doesn't appear to be any deadline really for asking for the discretionary recount.
Okay, that's one to think about as well. Thank you for that. I think that's cleared some things up, and I would lend my voice to what Justices Anderson and Lillehog said, which is this order of things seems appropriate for today, but that going forward, I think we ought to do some thinking about how we want to order it in the future, consistent, of course, with state statute. Mr. Poser?
Mr. Secretary and members. So we kind of have discussed, as we did after the primary, special primary, that the publicly funded recount needs the results to be within 0.5%, and then the candidate would need to ask in writing for that recount, since we didn't have anybody within the 0.5% in this particular, either of the special elections held on Monday. I didn't bring forward to you any plan for a publicly funded recount. What you do have in front of you is the discretionary contingent plan for a discretionary recount if any of the candidates who wish to pay for it out of their own pocket would come forward and ask for a recount. This plan then could be used to conduct that recount and then convene the canvassing board to look at the results of the recount that was conducted. And so I'd be glad to answer again any of the questions regarding the plan itself. It really is the same plan that was provided to you 2 weeks ago, just with the dates changed to reflect the special election rather than the special primary.
Any discussion? Any discussion from members? Seeing no discussion, we'll move to a vote on adoption of the contingent recount plans for publicly funded and discretionary recounts. It'll take a motion and a second.
Mr. Secretary, it's a motion just to adopt the contingent plan for discretionary recount, not the publicly funded.
That's right, okay, just the discretionary. So I'll amend that motion to an adoption of the discretionary recount, adoption of the contingent recount plan for the discretionary recount.
So moved.
It's been moved, is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion prevails, and the recount plan, contingent recount plan for discretionary recounts has been adopted. So at this point, I think that is it, other than, Mr. Poser, anything else? Oh. Sir. Mr. Black, let me ask you a tricky question. Are we permitted to entertain public testimony at this point?
That would be in the discretion of the board.
Okay. Sir, can you come up to the microphone and just identify yourself for the record briefly and let us maybe know? Can you give us a little roadmap of what it is you want to say?
My name is Rick Heller, unofficially represent the twice exceptional people with print disabilities. I come here at the State Canvass Board on February 14th, 2018 to basically ask when they're going to post the documents fully accessible online. They do have the handouts here to create more fairness and saneness and timely transparency that would be appropriate. I believe the Minnesota legislature has exempt themselves from Minnesota Statute 16E.03, subdivision 9, which requires state agencies and stuff make fully accessible based on the 508 regulatory and web content accessibility guidelines. It's important that the public, these open meetings, that you provide these documents in a timely manner, at the same time that people can come to them and talk. Obviously, as far as canvassing goes, and people understanding that, I believe the Secretary of State is exempt from that statute as well. Correct me if I'm not wrong, Mr. Black or Mr. Simon. However, I appreciate that allow me to speak on this. I think it's an important piece as we move ahead and start looking also at the web pages that are not fully accessible for the public, even though some of their disclosures are required to be on there, but doesn't on a font size. But when it comes searchable, is it fully searchable? Because if it's not fully searchable, is it transparent? So,
Mr. Heller, thank you. Your point is well taken, and we do strive to make all documents and information as accessible as possible. You have my commitment that I will confer with staff, and I'm happy to talk with you offline afterwards as well about how best to make that available, as we always do. Thank you.
just for the record, on the Data Practice Commission, there's a document from Minute. I've been waiting for 3 years. It's got a letterhead on it, so it's authentic, and it meets the Uniform Act. And it mentions a tool called Web. If you access that, the Heller document, you'll find that tool was part of a complaint that I filed with Minute about a school district. It's also a state agency which is required to follow the accessibility law. However, they're the only ones. And again, I'll stress, unless you yourself, Mr. Simon, have an accessibility policy, I don't take it seriously enough. That's all. And once you move in that direction, really, you start having a continuous improvement plan, goals and objectives to meet the accessibility. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Heller, I appreciate it. Mr. Poser, anything to add?
No,
Okay. Anything more generally?
no, Mr. Secretary.
Okay. If not, we've adopted the contingent recount plan. At this point, I'll just say that it is the intent of the chair to recess this meeting to February 22nd, 2018, subject to cancellation if no recounts are requested, so that the board may certify the report of any recount. Otherwise, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the State Canvassing Board is set for August 21st, 2018, to canvass the results of the August 14th, 2018 state primary election. Is there any other comment, questions?
The
from
February
any-
the February 22nd date, Mr. Secretary, is contingent on there being a recount?
That's correct,
requested?
Judge.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, there will be no motion to adjourn, and there is no motion needed to recess, so I will declare us to be in recess. Thank you, members.